Hey there. Good morning to Ella and to others. I just watched Ella's video about South Ossetia and what all's going on there, and just was feeling that I wanted to comment a bit about this and talk about what's going on, at least based on what I've been able to figure out in the last couple of days. I think we're all kind of getting up to speed on South Ossetia. I'm sure not. There weren't very many people who were experts on South Ossetia a week ago, at least not compared to now. And one of the things that I found really interesting when I started investigating this whole thing is kind of the shaky status of South Ossetia all throughout. You know, it was set up as being a largely independent part of Georgia. And it seems that Georgia's recent attempts to kind of bring them more into the fold is really the source of the problem here. Because I think Ossetia has always considered itself independent ever since the breakup of the old Soviet Union. And Georgia, largely until this point, has allowed them to treat themselves as such. You know, a majority of people in South Ossetia even hold Russian as opposed to Georgian passports. And so I think if we look at the situation as a whole, I think it's easy to see that, you know, if these people really think of themselves as being more Russian than Georgian, then I think what Russia is doing, at least, you know, in terms of protecting the territory, is, you know, pretty much okay. Aside from that, you know, there was a whole history of kind of Georgian intimidation leading up to the current situation, including them turning off the water to the area and doing the initiating conflict. In other words, Georgia attacked South Ossetia first before the Russians came in and attacked the Georgians, trying to protect what they view as being their citizens in South Ossetia. But I think there are a lot of other things kind of going on behind the scenes here. I mean, I think that's a very sort of literalist look at things. If you look at the situation, there are a whole lot of other factors that are coming into play. Largely, you know, we've been working to try to get Georgia into NATO. And we can see right now that, you know, if Georgia had already become a part of NATO, that this would have been, you know, a much more difficult situation, because the second that Russia attacked Georgia, that would have invoked the whole NATO alliance, basically, to come in on behalf of Georgia and defend them. And we would have had an international incident right away. So we can be very grateful that so far Georgia is not a part of NATO, and we actually have some choice as to whether or not we have to come to their support or not. Aside from that, I think it's important to be aware of the fact that we've been trying to strengthen ties with Georgia, and also Israel has been giving a lot of you know, information and equipment and training to the Georgians. And right now, you know, given what all, you know, the United States and Israel is involved in right now, having a lot of people from Israel and the United States in your country giving you advice and information and training and hardware, sorry, it doesn't make me think that, you know, you're setting up to be an ethical country. And when I saw some clips from you know, recent activities of like Georgian military and police forces trying to kind of mix it up with the South Ossetians and put down some protests that were taking place there. You could see them. They're all decked out in the very most modern riot gear. They have a lot of modern hardware for crowd control. They have those horrible things, which I fully expect to see at a peace rally here in the United States soon. Those trucks that have the device that puts out the piercing sound that is so loud that it will actually disorient you for a while, and and there are a lot of other things that are pioneered by American companies for crowd control, and because we have at least some civil liberties and some limitations on what police can do in a riot situation over here, we can't fully test out all the stuff that we have that's being developed in our own country to suppress people. We can give it to the police and stuff, but we can't necessarily test it out as much as we want to. We need somebody who has lower standards than we do. It's very similar, for example, to what's happening in China with all of the surveillance equipment, and how all these American companies who are developing all this very sophisticated surveillance equipment were setting up stuff in China, ostensibly for the Olympics, to spy on their people. And it's a way for us to test out all of this surveillance gear, which we can't quite roll out in this country yet, because we still have these clinging little vestiges of rights over here. But it doesn't keep American companies from going over to China and testing out all of this stuff on their people. And aside from that, another thing that I think we all need to think about is just how kind of Russia is playing out these days. I mean, I think that we're looking at, to a certain extent, a resurgent Russia, and Russia is now trying to play by the American rule book, because think about it. Russia's going in there. Their reasons for going into South Ossetia, honestly, are way better than our reasons to go into Iraq. So, honestly, I just want to laugh when I hear about, Bush sternly lecturing the Russians about how they absolutely need to respect the sovereignty of Georgia and get out immediately. It's like, okay, and Iraq? What about Iraq? Do we really have any moral stance to be making this argument to the Russians? Honestly, I think not. So, but I think one of the things that's important to remember, though, is Russia has been kind of downtrodden since the end of the Cold War, and I think right now we're looking at a resurgent Russia who is honestly just kind of doing this as a poke, both to maintain their buffer a little bit, because I don't think they want to be surrounded by NATO nations. I think they're probably starting to feel very under siege, much the way I'm sure Iran is right now, with the United States basically trying to surround it with hostile nations. And I think Russia feels a lot of the same way. And this is sort of them, and I heard somebody saying this the other day in a report, that Russia is trying to reassert itself and say, hey, we're a major player, and we're not going to tolerate this kind of stuff right on our border. And I think it's important also to look at this in terms of, if people have the imagination to imagine this happening on our own border. How would you feel if there was this disputed territory with Mexico, and we'd always thought of it as being part of the United States? It was technically a part of Mexico, but then Mexico came in and started, bombing all of these, let's say, lily white families living in gated communities in this disputed areas. How would the United States feel? How would the United States react? You don't think there would be absolute howls of outrage insisting that our country go to war to defend our countrymen living in Mexico? Let's get real for a moment. Of course there would be those howls, and of course that we would go in. If we can build popular support to go into a nation that has done nothing to us, that is no threat to us, like Iraq, then certainly we could build popular support for that. So basically, those are my thoughts about the Ossetian situation. I urge everyone to be cautious. I also urge people to keep their eye on the ball and think that this may be an excuse to go into Iran as well, or a diversion so we can't see what's going on in Iran. We've got that huge flotilla of ships going to the Persian Gulf. I mean, people need to be thinking about that as well. But more importantly than that, at this exact moment, is to make sure we don't get dragged into this conflict. Right now, our tendencies as a government are all to say that the Georgians are right, and they clearly aren't. I mean, as much as I'm no great big fan of the Russians at this moment, they're not the ones who are in the wrong right now. As always, thanks for watching.